Hello everyone, Jason Meyer here with November Block 2 Monday Morning Inspiration. Today I'd like to continue to talk about how our fundamentals, mainly making it visible, making it three-dimensional, making sure it has movement in our work, how that makes our work stronger. So I'm going to do something a little bit different with Monday Morning Inspiration, as is I'm going to take these master paintings and I'm going to work on them a little bit to show you how when we change the relationships in here, how that affects the painting. In particular, I'd like to talk about two things. One of our topics is for something to be visible, it's either got to be a light on a dark or a dark on a light, which leads us to our light being the highest value, the background being the middle value, and the shadow being our third value. So we can think about this, I refer to it many times as 1, 2, 3. 1 being the light, 2 being the background, and 3 being the shadow. So I've stressed the importance of that value sequence and how it applies in our work. So we're going to address that first, but then the second thing I would like to address is movement. Within our background, our entire background, from the darkest part of our background, maybe right over here, to the lightest part of our background, the dark part is still lighter than our shadow and darker than our light. The lightest part of the background, again, is lighter than the shadow and darker than our light. Okay, and that's what really gives things impact and makes the background stay back. Then the second thing we'll talk about is the movement in the background. Goes from there to there. We have green, we have pink, purple, we have yellow, green. So we have all these values, but again, they're going to fit, we have all these different colors, but they all fit within the value range between our light and our shadow. Let's test this theory out. Is that really true? What if we took the lightest part on the doll here, on the statue, and background, that same value? Did that doll lose some of its visibility? You would have to say yes. That background is so dark, it's really hard to focus on that statue. So this value is in the right value range between our shadow and our light. After you have the basics done, the real hard part of art, or the sensitivity, is exactly what measure, what value, what color is going to look best back there. And I would say we could probably all agree, I hope we could all agree, that's just too light. That's too light to get a good impact, good visual impact from the statue. What if we match the blue of the statue in the background? How will that affect the painting? Again, do you see how the statue's impact? Because the blue that's on the statue is no longer special. It's spread everywhere. And so we have no need or desire anymore to work out the blue on the statue. And while we're at it, what if we leveled out the blue on the statue and took away the movement of that? Right? It just kind of completely disappears. If we go a little darker and grayer, now the statues begin to appear a little bit better, don't they? So it's more than technically getting the value just between your light and the dark, right? There's values in there and colors in there that are going to look a lot better than others. Again, the lack of movement in the background makes the whole thing a little bit stiff and cold. But right now we're just concentrating on what works for the background and what doesn't. Right? So hopefully we've established that you want whatever's in the foreground to be stronger in value. If it's too light, it doesn't work. If it's got the same color in there at the same value, it doesn't work. And even if you're in between, if it's too close, it doesn't work either. In this background, we went a little warmer in contrast with the blue, and the value sits nicely between the light value on the face and the dark value on of the shadow. But even with a really good value in there, that lack of movement is felt, right? There's a lack of life, a lack of reality. So let's jump over to Sophus Jacobson's Moonlit Bay painting, and let's do the same thing. Let's investigate it. And I apologize for doing this, but in a way we want to kind of ruin these paintings so we can see what makes them so special. So in this painting, I want to concentrate more on movement. I want to concentrate on the movement from the foreground all the way back, including these steps. Right? I see four distinct steps. 1, 2, 3, 4. We could say 5, 6. It keeps going. But we're going to concentrate on the big dark right here. I'd also like to concentrate in the difference between the sky and the dark here and the sky and the dark here, to see what kind of movement and differences happen between these points in the background. And let's also take a look at the sky shape, and let's see how far they move from here to there. To investigate this, we're going to use this special tool that we have. I can call this little circle up, and then I can match any value and color with it wherever I put it. So the red on the bottom is the last color I was using, and then the color on the top of the circle is the color that I'm matching. So let's start dark. And what happens if we flatten this entire dark shape out with that single dark? Right? All these subtle movements of cool and little glints of light we're going to take out, just so that we can see the function that it actually has in the painting. And as we get back down here to this last part of the dark in the distance, look at the value difference. That's huge. And as we go over here and over here, and even up in the sky, so these big first movements that we get with the light and the dark and the background are important, but you can't finish there. You've got to, within those big values, make subtle movements as well. When you do, you have the beautiful illusion of depth. When you don't, you have a black, ominous hole. Okay, so some of you may be saying, yeah, but you used black on there. What if you used a lighter value? Well, let's grab our tool and let's take it maybe to this value right here. This is our feathers value. You see this is a little redder, a little warmer, and it's a little greener. Then it goes darker, lightens up just a bit, darker, lightens up a bit. So let's take the red and then flatten everything out with that and see what the result is. So we'll start in the foreground. Look at that value difference, right? Did you realize that those values were so far apart? And in some places the value is going to become the same, so we'll lose some of the edges. So if we took our time with the silhouette, it would still look pretty good, but it's lacking. It's lacking with that depth. Okay, so let's check again. What I'd like to check this time is the difference between here and here. Can we agree that this is lighter than this? Yes. And this is lighter than that. So the relationship of light against dark doesn't change, but what changes is how light to how dark. And that can make a big impact in the paintings. So let's grab our magic tool and let's start with the light sky over here. If we grab that, wow. Did you realize there was that much value difference? Again, this came right from the sky over the shack. And then what would happen if we didn't? Look, there's green, there's purple, pink, gray. We're going back to green, some red, purple. We're approaching yellow. So if you're flattening all that out, the environment loses its interest, right? And it becomes like a government building hallway or something. Does it work? Yeah, it still works kinda, but just not nearly as well. What if we cover up the moon? Look, just there's something to it, but the richness is lost. Those subtle movements in between those big values is one of the things that'll really bring the paintings to life. Okay, one last spot here. This time, let's investigate the movement from this side of the sky hole to this side, maybe even up here of the sky hole. Let's start on the dark end this time. So we'll match the sky right there. And then let's jump over by the moon. Well, again, did you realize the value difference was that great? I'll just go through the center here so we can get a sense of the values that's going around it. So once again, the situation is we're darker to lighter, and that relationship holds at this end, still darker to lighter, but the light's lighter, and then the dark is lighter versus a darker light and a darker dark. Right? So they're both moving in a darker direction. So one last thing before we go is let's grab the lightest sky now and run it over to the darkest to see the difference. And again, what I'll do is I'll just run a path right through the middle of this shape. So you can get a good sense of the changes that happen. That's pretty drastic. Pretty drastic. And what happens if we flatten that whole shape out? Things come to kind of a standstill, don't they? So in the last couple of months, we've talked about the proportion of the big pieces, like the sky to the land versus the ocean, and the importance of having variety in those. We've also revisited the importance of our light against our dark and being clear and consistent with that. And then today we started to take it one step further and examining the movement within those big darks and lights, and how that's kind of the final ingredient to give real charm to your paintings. So today we've looked at Sophus Jacobson, Moonlit Bay, and Hovsep Pushman. So I hope everybody has a good Thanksgiving weekend, and I'll be back Friday, perhaps Saturday because of the holidays, with a December Block 1 lesson. If some of you have some paintings you want to send in for the lessons, I would love to work on those digitally and talk about the principles we've been learning these last couple of years, and let's start applying them directly to our work to make our paintings more powerful and beautiful. For now, this is Jason Meyer signing off.